developed to the point where our need for materials, for energy, and space is changing profoundly the planetary systems that sustain the human population. And, you know, at this point, we're faced with a pretty stark choice. We either learn how to live sustainably or we bequeath to ourselves and our children and their children a planet that is significantly more difficult and more dangerous to live on. One of my childhood heroes, the astronomer Carl Sagan, very presciently expressed the idea decades ago. He said, quote, "Anything else you're interested in is not going to happen if you can't breathe the air and drink the water. Don't sit this one out, do something. You are by accident of fate alive at an absolutely critical moment in the history of our planet." And that idea is what motivated us to assemble the speakers that we have and the events that we have for the 3 days of this Presidential Symposium. Sustainable solutions can be found at the intersection of science, economics, and social equity, with education playing a very important role. There's little doubt that climate change is our largest and most daunting sustainability challenge. So we've structured the events of the symposium around these key themes. Today, the theme is Leading by Example, Hofstra's role in building a sustainable tomorrow. Wednesday, tomorrow, is devoted to addressing and adapting to climate change. And then finally on Thursday, we're going to conclude with sessions dealing with local initiatives, Hofstra's role in supporting sustainable communities. Also tomorrow, I just want to let everybody know, we have a lot of students in the audience, that we have 2 fun-related events. We're having a sustainability fair sponsored by Compass and featuring sustainable food service vendors, and that's going to happen from 12 to 2:30 out in the Pride Park behind the dining hall. And then in the evening from 6 to 8 p.m., there's going to be a Taste of the Neighborhood, another food event featuring local restaurants. So you definitely want to wander out to Pride Park and check those out tomorrow. Also, all of the events today will be in this room. The events tomorrow will be in the theater over in the Student Center. And then the events on Thursday will be back in this room. So I encourage everyone to go online, take a look at the program for the symposium, take a look at the different panel discussions and events that are going on, attend as many as you can, and discover that there really is a lot happening at Hofstra relating to sustainability with I think much more to come. So watch, listen, and please do get involved. So with that, let me introduce what we're going to be talking about today. Today's session is Building a Sustainable Campus, Faculty, Staff, and Student Initiatives. So I've assembled a group of speakers who represent the faculty, myself, staff, people who are kind of work to maintain the campus, and then students as well. And we have an outside person who has been working with us on some things which we'll talk about. And the kind of the main theme that we're going to be discussing in this session, it all revolves around growing things. And we're talking about activities that are working towards creating sustainable food systems, producing food locally in unconventional ways and in unconventional places, but also building sustainable suburban ecosystems. And all of these ideas I've kind of united around, for lack of a better name, I call this the Hofstra Sustainability Farm. So we're doing a bunch of things to try and utilize the Hofstra campus to promote sustainability in these areas. And some examples illustrated on the slide here. We have Mike Runkel from Building and Grounds, who's going to talk about work that Grounds has been doing to plant native species on campus and install pollinator gardens. We have a Hofstra bird sanctuary, which is becoming the focus of a lot of activity related to ecological restoration, promoting native species, and also there's a connection to wellness, which I'm going to get my colleague Bob Gluck to speak about in just a minute here. We have greenhouses on campus, which we've started to use to start vegetables for a student garden, which we're in the process of expanding. And we've started producing vegetables and native plants to donate to other institutions, other people. We did some work in the spring helping out the Roosevelt Community Garden, and we have Andrea Millwood, who's the director of the Roosevelt Community Garden, who's going to talk a little bit about what can we be doing at Hofstra to facilitate community gardens by supporting other community gardens, and maybe also by starting our own community garden on campus. So all of these things are trying to move us towards a more sustainable food system, more sustainable suburban ecosystems, and also give us things to do and places to be on campus that promote our own sense of physical and emotional and mental well-being. So just to say a couple words about that, I want to bring Bob Gluck up to the podium here. And Professor Gluck is a professor in the School of Nursing. Go ahead, take over.
So first off, I just want to thank Brett, Professor Bennington, for inviting me here. It's an incredible pleasure to be here. You know, I'll play off of the quote from Carl Sagan, I was up at Cornell. He was a professor while I was up there. I'm also a big fan. So the idea that, you know, the overarching theme here is sustainability and wellness of the planet. As Professor Sagan said, you know, we could talk about wellness, nutrition, exercise. You can't have, you know, individual wellness and health if the planet is sick. So there's a very natural and organic alliance and synergy between sustainability and between wellness, lifestyle health, lifestyle medicine, et cetera. So, you know, it's been an incredible pleasure of mine and gift really to sort of hook up with Dr. Bennington because, you know, we're trying to find common ground and motivate what's really an incredible wealth of riches that we have at this university, where we have a medical school, where I'm an adjunct. We have a nursing school where actually I have my full-time appointment, and the nursing school encompassing all sorts of stuff, undergraduate, graduate, perfusion programs, physician assistant studies, etc. We have a school of health professions and human services, which is also, you know, an umbrella for all sorts of wonderful talent and skill sets. And then we have a pretty strong alliance with Northwell, which I'm sure many, if not most of you know, I mean, is a huge player nationally, certainly in New York. They employ some 80,000 people. There's 26 or 7, I lost count, institutions. So we have a partnership with them. So what we're trying to do is and we've had, you know, some early success. You know, it's trite to say break down the silos, but that's what we're trying to do. We have, you know, a lot of people are not aware that other people exist. We're trying to motivate conversations. A lot of great work has already been done. We're trying to motivate that to continue, create synergies. There's a lot of talk about interprofessional collaboration. We're trying to make it happen. Sometimes it's hard to make it happen. I mean, everybody, you know, is on board with the concept, but trying to get people together, you know, merge schedules, timetables, you know, that's a challenge, but we're doing that. We have a lifestyle medicine group that we've already established at the medical school. We've had events at the bird sanctuary, trying to get people outdoors. I know you guys as students walk outside between classes, but, you know, I have 3 kids, and, you know, it's hard to get them off their electronics, let's put it that way, right? It's a parenting challenge. So we're trying to get people outdoors. There's actually an entity called Nature Deficit Disorder. Okay, it's a real thing. You get people outdoors, and it's like watering a plant. They suddenly come to life. So we're trying to do, all of this, and again, sort of link up, collaborate with Professor Bennington, coming at the same goals from a slightly different approach. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you again.
All right, so the way we're going to do this is everybody is going to give their piece of the presentation, and then when we're finished, we'll raise the screen and we'll ascend the stage, and then we can have a bit of a Q&A and a discussion. The order we're going to go in, let me reiterate, I just want to reintroduce the folks that are part of this panel here. So again, we have Mike Runkel, who is the Assistant Director of Grounds at Hofstra University. We have Andrea Millwood, who is a director or an assistant director at the North Shore Land Alliance and the director of the Roosevelt Community Garden, which is not just a couple miles south of the Hofstra campus. And then we have a group of students who were in either the Sustainability and Food course last spring or the Intro to Food Studies course, or our sustainability, or were sustainability grad students and graduated, who are going to talk about some project ideas that they developed in these two courses. So to start with, I'm going to bring Mally Padone up to the podium to talk about her idea from the Food Studies course, and she has to go to work, so we have to give her a chance to speak. Go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Mally Padone, and I was in the Food Studies course last semester. My group and I decided to work on a project called Foodchella. And basically what Foodchella is, it's a food truck event where we'll have various food truck cuisines come together, such as halal food, Mexican, Japanese, Italian, all different kinds. It'll provide the unique opportunity to bring students together in large groups to bond over culturally diverse foods, and it also allows conversations for students to educate each other. A lot of the time we learn about foods and stuff in the classroom, but this gives the opportunity for students to learn outside of the classroom and explore with each other and different types of foods that they don't really know of. In order to see if this would be successful and sustainable for our campus, we had to look into what other students did and what other college campuses did. So one example we had was California State Polytech University, and they came up with a food truck called the Poly Trolley. It had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it had seasonal foods all within students' budgets. And the sustainable portion of that is it deals with seasonal foods, so you're taking foods from your local businesses and incorporating it into the food trucks. Another example was from the University of Maryland, and they had the Green Tidings food truck. It rotated the menu once a week, and offered fresh and sustainable foods to their students. They had options such as salads, soups, tacos, sandwiches, and falafel. Getting into the how is this sustainable for our campus, the first way is that it's the accessibility to all the trucks. Students will have easy access. It will meet once a year in a location right outside the student center where everyone can have access to it, and people can basically smell the foods from their windows if they're dorming on campus. It's also sustainable by what foods are provided. Again, all the foods will be seasonal and diverse, so there's always something new to try. Again, once a year, the students will have it. It will either be in fall or spring semester, depending on what the overall students want and when they want it to be. And it really gives students the first hands-on experience with food outside of the classroom, again, because we learn a lot in the classroom, but never really get to have the hands-on opportunities to experience with this type of food. So that is it for the presentation. I'm sorry I won't be here for any questions, but I just wanted to thank all of you for listening.
Thank you, Molly. That was terrific. So on the subject of food, we're going to move to Andrea Millwood, who, as I said, is the director of the Roosevelt Community Garden. And one of the things that I think it's important for Hofstra to become involved in is working with community gardens to help them provide their constituents with seedlings, with starter plants, which we can produce very easily on campus. We have our own student garden, but what we discovered last spring is we can produce a lot more vegetables than we can fit in our own student garden. And then a real sort of end goal that I see would be for Hofstra to host its own community garden on North Campus, where students, faculty, staff, members of the local community could sign up for a plot and raise vegetables in the spring, the summer, and the fall. Again, this is all working towards in developing local sources of healthy food. So let me bring Andrea up to the podium here, and I just have to pull up your presentation. So give me a second to. Oh, whoops. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Come on. Now it worked. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrea Millwood from the North Shore Land Alliance, and I represent today the Roosevelt Community Garden, which is in Roosevelt, which is south of here. Thank you so much to Professor Benningham to having me here today. So today I just want to talk to you a little bit about the Roosevelt Community Garden and how we got started. But before I do that, I just want to introduce the North Shore Land Alliance and how we got started with the Roosevelt Community Garden. So North Shore Land Alliance is a not-for-profit land trust based on the North Shore in Oyster Bay on Long Island right now. We are a 501c3 organization, and our mission is to protect and preserve open space in perpetuity for many reasons. And one of those reasons is for you to enjoy open space for recreation. We do it for wildlife and habitat. We also do it for just protecting the water that's underneath the ground where we get our drinking water from. So we do it for many reasons. We protect the land, we steward acres of land that we preserve, and we connect people to land through many programs. Some of the programs that we host are the Long Island Water Education Program, where we go into several schools and we teach youth about, it's part of the curriculum, we teach youth about where their drinking water comes from. And we've educated over 10,000 students over the past 3 years on where their drinking water comes from. We also host a series of walks in the woods that connect people through land. So we protect a series of acres that we can connect you through, and you can learn about a lot about that on our website at the Land Alliance, NorthShoreLandAlliance.com. One of the programs that we started in 2018 was the Roosevelt Community Garden, and that started in partnership with Nassau County. It was a 10,000 acre parcel. It was vacant land. It was overgrown with shrubs and nothing was happening. So they approached the Land Alliance because we were already in partnership with them with several other programs and parcels of land that we were purchasing. So they said it was a great fit for us to purchase this land and turn it into a pilot project to start a community garden in an underserved community where we can teach people how to grow their own food and connect them with the land. That's the whole goal, teach them to grow and connect them with land. That's what we're always focusing on. So in 2016, we started the conversation with Nassau County and the community to see if this was a good fit. So we had quite a few programs in the community where we talked to them to see if they would like it. They did, and what kind of programs that they would like to see. It was a natural fit for me because I kind of lived in the community and I knew a lot of people in the community. I was the PTA president, so it just worked well. I worked with North Shore Land Alliance. I lived in the community, so everything just meshed very well for us. The community garden is 10,000 square feet. We have 48 raised beds. We didn't plant anything in the ground. We decided to go with raised beds because it was easier, and we wanted to make sure we were using good soil to grow the food. We have 2 tool sheds. We installed an educational pavilion and a picnic area where we can have outdoor classroom sessions for anyone who want to come and learn in the garden. Thanks to the county, we also have water source so we can grow our own food. We provide tools. We provide everything to the community. All they have to do is come and grow. This is our 5th year in the program. Our first mission was just to really start it as a 2-year pilot program and hand it over to the community. But in 2 years, it was really hard to kind of just turn it over to the community because we were still figuring things out, figuring out which model was best for the garden, whether it's renting individual plots or doing community plots. So as we were growing over these past 5 years, we've just been figuring out what works well for the community and to see how well it takes in the community. And I have to say that as a member of the community, a lot of people are just growing to love this program and what we have to offer. So the Roosevelt Community Garden provides a safe space for people to grow their own food, learn, connect with each other as neighbors, and to get outside, which is most important. I have to say, for myself, I've met a lot of neighbors that I didn't know who was living in the community. So just being a part of this community garden, forget about what I do for work, I've connected a lot with neighbors, which is nice. The garden brings together people of all age, races, backgrounds, and physical abilities. We have 3 raised plots that are wheelchair accessible. So anyone who can't bend, we do have students who are physically disabled, so it's easier for them to stand on these higher raised beds, which is nice. We work with people from not just Roosevelt, but throughout Nassau County. So we have both African Americans, we have Caucasians, we have West Indians, we have young as, I think 18 years old was the first student that started with us. He purchased his own plot. He was a student in the Bronx at, I believe, Medgar Evers, and he took his own plot with his family, and he's been there ever since. So it's nice to work with so many different faces and so many different groups in the garden. The community partners help to enhance our educational programs and provide valuable tools for us. So partnering with Hofstra University this summer was really nice because they provided a lot of plants that we might not be able to purchase because we do run on grant funding. And you know, when that runs out, sometimes it makes it a little bit challenging to continue these programs. So having partnership helps to make the community garden sustainable. One of the partners we also partner with is Cornell Cooperative Extension of Nassau County, and along with them, we do monthly educational programs for the gardeners. So not only do we provide the space and the tools and the plants, thanks to Professor Bennington, we also provide education. So we teach them how to garden. We teach them how to mulch. We taught them how to compost, how to harvest. Next month is our garlic planting. So we're gonna teach them how to plant the garlic, and then next year, we'll teach them how to harvest the garlic, which we did this year, which I still have my garlic. So it's nice partnering with local organizations to help make the garden sustainable. We also partner with organizations such as the Roosevelt Union Free School District, because we need teachers to come out and help teach our youngsters how to garden. One of the mission of North Shore Land Alliance this year is to kind of do more native plantings. So this year at the garden, we worked with One World Girl, which is a youth organization, to plant a lot of native plants throughout the garden and at the front of the garden this year to attract more pollinators. If you come to the garden, you see a lot of butterflies and birds flying around, which is really nice, and the kids really love it. So we've increased our youth programs, but we couldn't do that without community participation. We also partner with the local library, because sometimes, you know, in the beginning of the year, when we start to put our plots together, we have to teach them about gardening. And so we do it at the local library, and, you know, they give us the space and all the tools that we need to facilitate that. We are working on inspiring the next generation of conservation leaders and farmers at the garden. Land Alliance mission is to inspire youth to become the next group that protects land. And in order to do that, we have to teach them starting when they're very young. So we start at the garden with ages 4 to 11. We also have an O'Neill Conservation Stewards program that works with college students. So we bring college students to a lot of the preserves that we have. We teach them about natives, and we help do a lot of work on steward a lot of the preserves. We also bring them to the garden to facilitate programs with the youth. So if anyone is interested, I can tell you more about that at a later time. We also work with students to volunteer in the garden. So this summer, we had students who need community service. So it provides benefits not just to us, but also to the students that live in the community. So the Roosevelt Community Garden, this is our 5th year, and it has been growing tremendous, and the community is loving, North Shore Land Alliance is loving it, and we're hoping to make it more sustainable by continuing our partnerships with Hofstra University and other organizations who can bring any kind of valuable resource, whether it's time, whether it's plants, whether it's resources, anything you can offer, it helps to make community gardens sustainable. We would love to do another one. I know we have a space that was given to us to start another community garden, but it's more on the North Shore. But starting community gardens in any area provides value to that community, whether it's education, teaching kids how to eat more healthy. A lot of people are coming down today, they're getting sick. And we need to teach our youth how to eat better so they can live healthy, happier lives. So I just want to thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions later.
So is there anything that Andrea talked about that doesn't align with the mission of Hofstra University? I think community gardens are just an incredible way to bring people together, to educate children, to educate adults, to educate our own students, and to really move the ball of the sustainability ball down the field. So I'm gonna fumble around now and try and find my way back to the other presentation. Okay, now the hard part. Oh, look at that. All right, so talking a bit about growing food and vegetables, let's talk a little bit about growing native plants. So let me bring Mike Runkel up to the podium here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Runkle. I'm the Assistant Director of Grounds here at Hofstra University. You may know this or not, we do promote it, but we are also an arboretum. We have been since 1986. We've been recognized by the American Public Gardens Association as such. So in addition to providing our primary services to you, the students, faculty, staff, and any visitors that come to campus, of providing a safe and cleanly learning environment, we are progressively managing this 250-acre property as an arboretum. On our first slide here, you'll see some photographs that I've included in this. A lot of our work that we do is, maintenance and all that goes into it, mow and blow and leaf cleanup in the fall. But you'll see a few photos in here of things that we do on the regular, projects that make your experiences here at Hofstra all the better. You'll see in the top corner there our new patio outside of Memorial Hall that was completed this year. In the bottom corner, you'll see our Pride Park renovation, which actually took place the summer before I arrived here on campus, but it's a very popular spot, especially since COVID, when people are trying to get outdoors. You'll also see a couple of action shots of our grounds crew working. You'll see them around campus because you can't miss them. I think you could see them from space in the safety yellow that they have, but that's part of the deal. We haven't hit on it yet, but it's something that, I know there was a trip there, if any of you, and that's kind of going to give it away, but does anybody here know what this site was before it was Hofstra University? What was it? The entirety of the campus. Okay, all right, so I'll come back to you. So I've been here for just about 3 years. So fast forward 2 weeks ahead, 3 years ago, I was sitting in HR for my orientation to the campus. And the question was posed, do you know what this was, before it was Hofstra University? And I got excited like a kid in school when you know the answer and you're squirming and everything like that. And plant guys, we're wired a little differently. I raised my hand. Thankfully, they called on somebody else because the answer was Mitchell Field. And that is true, Mitchell Airfield Base. But before that, long before that, it was the Hempstead Plains. The Hempstead Plains were 40,000 acres of grasslands. They were some of the most expansive grasslands east of the Appalachian Mountains. There is only about I think it's about 10 acres of preserved acreage that is left. All of the towns around here that you know, Hempstead, East Meadow, Plainview, Plain Edge, they're all named because they were around or in the Hempstead Plains. So a lot of my talk will kind of continue back to that. Sustainability defined. There's several definitions of sustainability, and they're all relevant in this talk, but probably the most common when you think of, what can you do with resources that you have is the ability to maintain a certain level or rate, right? The second one is, as others have touched on, is the avoidance of depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. The one that was focused on in my education at Farmingdale College was meeting the needs of today's population without diminishing the ability of future generations to provide their needs and meet their needs. And I think that's where the levity of this situation comes into place. I think a lot of people have approached climate change and sustainability issues as that was, it's going to be the future generations problem to solve. I can remember being in grade school and learning, Al Gore, The Inconvenient Truth, and the rhetoric around that was, our generation screwed it up. Now you guys have to fix it. That's daunting. It's not really the most productive approach to tell a bunch of fourth graders that. But that's the way it was presented. But now I have kids of my own. My son's in second grade, and it's not 50, 100, 120. We're talking about, real changes in their lifetimes, and that's why it's important what we're doing here. So sustainability in action here on Hofstra's campus. The beauty of working here at Hofstra is once you check the boxes of what you have to do, the minimums are that we have to meet, there's a lot of latitude to do more. And that more for Fred Soviero, who's in attendance here for 35 years, was building an arboretum. That's going to continue to be the case for me, but now it's also about how do we do it more sustainably. So things that we've already been working on during these first 3 years that I've been here with Fred and support from the administration, we have a really progressive tree planting program. We are investigating ways to be more sustainable in our turf care, because turf is absolutely necessary on a college campus for athletics, places for students to lay out with a blanket, throw a frisbee, all of those things. GIS mapping. GIS is in everything that you do in this day and age, and we're mapping our campus tree collection, so we'll get into that a little bit. In February this year, Professor Bennington approached us and about installing pollinator gardens on campus. He said there's a clear void of native plant material in abundance to attract and provide habitat for pollinators. So he kind of got the ball rolling. It's an exciting partnership, one that I hope to continue for many years. And we installed our very first pollinator garden, which I'll talk about a little bit more. Kind of the opposite of native plant material is the other side of it. Many plants are favored for their attributes, and they're grown for those purposes. And over time, we've learned that we've kind of made some mistakes along the way, not just here at Hofstra, but the horticultural industry as a whole. And we need to try to address some of those things. So invasive plant removal is another one that we've been working on. And beneficial insect releases to work as an alternative to common means of pest control. Trees, grass, they all have their health issues, whether it's a fungal problem, insects, and if you don't treat them, they can if they're over a certain threshold, they can kill that tree. So Hofstra's approach has always been to use the least invasive means necessary. We do a lot of stuff with water, but we're also getting into a more beneficial approach and a biological control approach. Trees. Trees are the answer. If you've ever seen a car with that bumper sticker, they are right. Trees provide shade, which is fun to sit under, but the benefits of a tree in the proper location on the side of a building can greatly impact what that building needs as far as heating and cooling infrastructure and energy use. Reduced runoff. We haven't had much rain to speak of in the summer, but before a drop even hits the ground underneath the tree, it has already intercepted a certain amount, and it will hold that based on the surface tension of the leaf. So if it's hung up in the canopy of a 40-plus year or tall oak tree in that canopy, it's not landing on pavement, it's not going into a storm drain, and it's not winding up in our waterways. Reduce heat island effect. The idea of heat island effect, hardscape, retains heat. It takes that much longer for it to cool down even in the absence of heat. Shade, again, cooling. Absorbing carbon dioxide in the processes of producing sugar and photosynthesis that it does, and then storing it in its tissues. And I also will talk about a couple of pictures on this slide. Part of what we're also doing with our trees, and it takes time with our crews who are used to working a certain way, is we've done a lot of mulching of leaves into beds. You'll see another talking point you'll see amongst environmental gardeners is leave the leaves, right? We've been taught that leaves are litter, so we clean them up, but leaves are not litter. There's nobody cleaning up leaves in a forest setting, and there is more activity in that duff layer in a forest than there is anywhere else, and it's super important. It's how we keep healthy soils and how we keep healthy trees, and we could reduce the number. So you see that picture with the ferns and the leaves. There's areas where we can do this on campus. There's other areas where they would just constantly blow around and they would not look well. Also in these pictures, you'll see in the top, would be your top left-hand corner, that's what my crew belovingly calls the Runkle Patch. That is on the North Campus behind Colonial Square, and all those plants came from the National Arboretum or the Holly Society of America, and a lot of those plants are selected and we're trialing because they are native south of here, or their cold hardiness and heat hardiness is south of here. As we're warming, as we're considering trees for this campus and longevity and resiliency to climate change, we can't continue to plant the same species that we've been accustomed to because they're just not keeping up with the rate that we are warming, which is a shame because there's a pretty important fact about keystone species that I'll get to in a minute. So in order to have these trees be healthy and long-lived here on our campus, we need to kind of evaluate that. So those small trees that are growing in 1-gallon containers currently in my weedy patch will eventually be part of the backbone of our campus collections. Just gonna look back to some notes real quick. So I spoke about keystone species. Keystone species, as far as trees are concerned, are those that are essential in the realm of pollinating insects. There are special adapted evolutionary traits of trees and insects and birds. They've all evolved together, and those are referred to, the species that do the most for those services are called keystone species. White oak, for instance, is a larval host for 436 individual Lepidoptera, which is the group of insects that monarch butterflies belong to. Monarchs get all the PR because they're pretty, right? And we all have heard plant milkweed if you want monarch butterflies, but there are a lot of others that don't get the love that monarchs do because they start with a caterpillar and nobody really likes caterpillars, but you can't have one without the other. Black cherry is a larval host for 340 of those same caterpillars. River birch, 284. So in the past here on Hofstra's campus, it was always emphasized to have 60 to 70% of the trees be evergreen, so that way there was always a lush look to the campus that met the target months that our students are here. And that should continue, but we should also be emphasizing the need to be planting these keystone species, these major shade trees that will continue to provide our campus with canopy and all these other attributes. IPM and beneficials. What you're looking at here almost looks like a roof shingle, right? But what you're actually looking at is a card that has hundreds, if not thousands, of lacewing eggs that will hatch, and they will go and they will feast, and they will knock down pest populations to the point where if there's no longer any food for them to eat, they will decline out of the population themselves. This is a break from our norm on campus of IPM. IPM stands for Integrated Pest Management. That program emphasized scouting, which meant that in years past, you've probably heard of DDT and chlordane and all those nasty chemicals that are still in our environment because they biomagnify. Well, IPM was sort of the solution to that. In the late 80s, early 90s, this idea of integrated pest management was born, and its root was scouting. And instead of these blanket applications of one chemical solves all cures, it was more specific, it was targeted, and you always started with the least invasive means, a soap, an oil, usually organically derived, and then when you couldn't do it with that, you'd use the other tools in the toolbox, if you will. So that's always been the approach here, but like I said, we're now shifting to more biological control with some beneficial insect releases. GIS mapping, this is really exciting here. At a minimum, it quantifies our campus collection. What you see here is a map of the South Campus, these academic areas. Around this time last year, we started the ball rolling on a project to map our campus trees to really quantify the work that we're doing. Inset in that picture, you'll see Joy Arden, who has been our consultant on this project, with a Trimble on her back, which is the device that's used to collect those data points. So why is this a sustainable feature on this campus? Well, not only are we going to be able to say we have this many trees, but within that database of information, we can track our pesticide applications more closely. We can track our fertilizations more closely, so we're not over applying because there's a breakdown in communication between crew members or something like that. It also allows for storm damage response to track those tree losses in certain storms, which could be beneficial in recouping money for use on campus. And once this program is completely fulfilled and all the data is populated in the system, it will be very useful for research for various programs on this campus and grant writing. Pollinator gardens, native plants, right? So plants are great in general, but the right plants are the answer. Again, Dr. Bennington approached us in February. We worked with a designer on this particular project. This is on the west side of Burnham Hall, the admissions building. And I have some kind of before and afters, a little more of a during. But you can see we sod cut out the beds around some existing plant material, and some 50 or 60 varieties of native flowering plants, grasses, shrubs, and trees were planted. Also on the hottest day of the year. There's nothing like good timing. But it's when we could get the plants here, when we can get the designer here. So featured here on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a piece of milkweed that actually isn't in that garden. It was in the family garden, which you saw a photo of me and Eliana Booth, who might be in this room, planting this milkweed. And this is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It may not be the prettiest thing in the world right now, but it's being eaten by monarch caterpillars. It's being populated by milkweed plant bug, and it's loaded with aphids. So that means that birds are being fed, monarchs are being fed, and they will be coming back here because they know that there's a food source and a place for them to nest. Also included in this picture are some other spots from around campus. Some of my favorites are hibiscus. Why do you need a tropical plant when you have something that looks like the top left there and the bottom right? Those are both native plants, and who would have thought, right? We decide what plants are named, and we've kind of used weed in a lot of them, and it kind of sets people back, but most of the plants that we've used in here are also used in common landscape plants, and we just need to start thinking about them a little bit differently. You'll also see this beautiful fall shot here, also on the west side of the Vernon Hall admissions building. That includes Calamagrostis, which is a non-native grass, with Joe Pyeweed, which is native, behind it. I included that because the beauty doesn't end with flowers. Those plants are beautiful in seed, and part of the process is allowing things to stand up a little bit more and letting birds forage for those seeds and letting those pollinating insects have a place to overwinter, not just building it for them to come and feed. So why pollinator gardens? What do they do for us besides all the eco-services they provide for insects? They need little to no water once they're established. They'll be watered this year. They might be watered once or twice next year in an extreme drought if we experience what we've experienced this year. But their root systems, in the root systems of perry plants, go 6-8 feet deep, where most common landscape plants are in the top foot. So once they're established, they need little to nothing from us. No fertilizer required. I don't have the exact facts and figures for you, but there's studies that tell you the surface soil temperature of a prairie versus a manicured lawn is, 5 to 10 degrees different. That's real. Stormwater runoff, they serve as sponges to intercept that same water and keep water out of our waterways and nitrogen out of our bodies of water. The other side of it that I referenced, many of these plants that we have on campus here are not just exclusive to Hofstra. You can see in some of these photos why they were selected. This beautiful blue and purple plant was introduced because it was very ornamental, but now it's escaped the garden, and it's become one of the most noxious plants on Long Island as far as invasives go. Just next to it is Asiatic bittersweet or Oriental bittersweet. That is a monster in and of itself because it absolutely will choke out anything that it gets on top of. It gets to the point where a bittersweet vine, once mature, that's been supported, if what it was growing on died and rotted out, the bittersweet would be strong enough to stand on its own in its place. You see that lovely insect there? That's a Lepidoptera of its own. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. It's all over the news. That is spotted lanternfly. And why am I talking about spotted lanternfly when I'm talking about invasive plants? Well, the tree, the largest picture on that is Tree of Heaven, which is its first choice plant, and it is why it's abundant, because that invasive plant is its favorite. It will go just about anywhere that plant is, but it's also not very selective. It will go to any number of other desirables. So, and they're finding that not only is it a fan of Tree of Heaven, but the first place it will also go is to Asiatic bittersweet. So by culling some of these things from our campus landscape, we could avoid a nuisance pest like spotted lanternfly, which has been spotted on our campus. The other ones that I included are not necessarily quite as escaped or as big of a problem, but Miscanthus fountain grass is pretty common and is starting to be borderline as far as invasive plants go out in ecological sites. One that definitely is not on an invasive plant list is English ivy, which is abundant on campus and has definitely escaped the garden, not just here, but other places. And another area that they impact things is they change soil chemistry. The reason why plants that are invasive are so successful is because they're basically changing the soil chemistry to the point where nothing else wants to grow around it. How am I doing on time? Am I going too long? Yeah, speed it up? Okay, very good. All right, turf care. Again, necessary on a college campus. We are currently exploring low nitrogen fertilizers. We've partnered with a Long Island company, and we've been trialing it in 6 of our most choice areas, and it seems to be doing really well. That product is called Earthworks. It not only provides the typical nutrient analysis, but it also is putting micronutrients into the soil and actually growing that soil as opposed to kind of force feeding it with traditional synthetic fertilizers. Selecting seeds that are drought tolerant, progressive overseeding so that way the canopy is dense in the turf, aeration so that way water and air get into that soil profile and the things you're putting on it are working. Wetting agents is a whole nother game. It basically makes water wetter, so when you're not getting it as often as you should, it makes it more effective. And again, target applications versus blanket applications, treating those areas of need without, decimating, innocent bystanders in the process. Thank you very much. Sorry if I went long. I usually take 15 minutes to say hello.
I just want to thank Mike and Fred Soviero and the whole grounds department. They've just been incredibly helpful in achieving some of these changes to what we're growing on campus. And I feel like there's just been a whole change in mindset and just being aware of how important it is to have native trees. Mike mentioned, how a white oak supports 400 different species of butterfly. And the butterflies are laying their eggs on the oak leaves. The eggs are hatching into caterpillars. Birds are using the caterpillars to feed their young. They're using the trees to nest in. So the whole base of the ecosystem is supported by native plants. And we have this huge campus, and if we can include native plants and pollinator gardens in the mix of what we're growing here, we're going to go a long way to supporting the ecological diversity of Nassau County and suburban Long Island. So it's just terrifically important, and it's so cool to see what we're doing. All right, so now we're gonna shift a little bit, and we'll go back to talking about food, and let's talk a little bit about food waste. So I'm going to bring up the dream team here. Natalie, Cameron, and Connor, 3 of our sustainability studies students, to talk about some ideas they have for reducing food waste.
Hello, my name is Cameron Gallagher.
I'm Connor Latimer, Ireland.
And I'm Natalie Correa.
And today we're going to talk about some ways that we think we can reduce food waste at Hofstra's campus. So first off, what is food waste? Basically, food waste is food that is perfectly fine to eat that ends up getting thrown away for one reason or another. On Hofstra's campus, that could be food that is wasted during the preparation process, food you can't eat, like carrot peels and that type of thing, food that is expired, or food that students buy that they end up throwing away that would otherwise be perfectly fine to eat. The main issues that we were running into with food waste at Hofstra is there's a bit of a lack of transparency in finding out how much food waste we have, and then also we know, just like any other college, there's a lot of food waste being generated at Hofstra. We do know that Compass has a waste not system that tracks food waste. We just aren't able to find any data about that, any public data. And with all of that in mind, we set out to find out ways that we could reduce food waste on campus further.
All right, so aside from reducing how much food waste we're producing, we're always going to be producing some food waste. So we also want to find ways to dispose of that more sustainably. And the big way to do that is through composting. So there are many, many ways to compost, but for our purposes, there are kind of 3 that we need to consider. So the first one is like small scale stuff. So in our gardens and our greenhouse, there are a lot of smaller scale solutions. Natalie will touch on those a little later. And then for the rest of our food waste, for like our dining hall food waste, we have kind of 2 options. One is to do it ourselves. So I think Stony Brook has their own like composting vessel. So they take their food scraps, they throw it in there, it processes it, and then they get the compost directly out of that. So obviously that would be the biggest investment, but it would mean all of it would be under our control, and we would be able to get the entire, oh, thank you. We would get the entire benefits from that. Alternatively, there are a lot of resources, or a lot of organizations that will collect food scraps, process them on their own, and then sometimes even give us a little bit of that compost back. So I think the New York State government has a whole list of these services that are available. So that's another option. So aside from how we're composting, we also need to figure out where we're composting. So ideally, all of our food waste gets composted, but different locations have different challenges that we need to consider. So if we're doing kitchen side or back of the house, it's gonna be a lot easier to manage what's going in, and we can make sure that compost remains uncontaminated, but then once the food gets served, you can no longer compost it. So if we're thinking about student side as well, a lot of our energy needs to focus in education, because a lot of people don't really know what can go into compost, how to compost it. So we need to make sure we're covering all of our bases if we're gonna do that as well.
Okay, so while that kind of talks about what we can do with our food waste, how about ways that we can reduce food waste from happening in the first place? So we can look at this in two kind of ways. So first, what is direct food waste, which is those direct food scraps that Cameron mentioned earlier. Some ways to reduce this is that we could incorporate some more self-serve options on campus, which allows students to create their own portions for things so that they're not getting too much food and they're getting just what they think that they can handle. Having fresher and better quality food. In the surveys that we did for the class, we found that a lot of people felt that sometimes things felt a little undercooked. They didn't feel that fresh. They didn't feel like they wanted to eat it, so they would kind of throw that out. And going with that is better preparation and line maintenance, making sure that things are really fully cooked through. And for people who have dietary restrictions, allergies, line maintenance is really important to help prevent cross-contamination, which was also a reason that we found that people were throwing away their food. Now with this, we also have food-related waste, which means things that come along with the process of preparing food and eating food on campus. Something like this would be disposable containers and disposable utensils. So something like a plate-first policy, where we have reusable plates and reusable utensils, cups, where those are like your first option, that would help to reduce that kind of waste. Also having more accessible feedback forms so that whoever's coordinating the kind of food menus for the week or whatever time scale, they're making things that people want to eat so that things aren't being thrown out because nobody's really been eating them on the back of house side. And then also with this, clearer information on these initiatives so that people know these things are happening. Hofstra we emailed and we found out that they are doing things on campus, but they're things that we don't know about. And if people don't know about them, you can't do them. So since our proposal that we made in May, we have some updates on things that we've seen around campus. So the first thing that we can see in the upper left-hand corner, that is a composter that is in the student garden that has been there for a few months. The only thing that we're unsure about is if it's ever been harvested for compost and if it's ever been used. But this does mean that we can start to use that as a way to research using it in the student garden, for instance, or in other places around campus. Underneath that, we see that in the student center, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but over at Yobel, there is now a self-serve option where people can pay 57 cents per ounce and grab their own portions. Next to that, we see that in the student center next to Starbucks, at the end of last semester, they implemented a new sustainability board, which can in the future be used to spread more information about these initiatives. If a plate first policy gets input, how to enact in that, how to compost, and use this for education. And lastly, which is really cool, is that on all the kind of like little stations over in the student center, we now have QR codes where students can scan those and you can give direct feedback to like Compass and to everybody on campus saying what the quality was, where you were, and the day that it happened. So you can say, yeah, this was pretty good, or hey, this was really sketchy. Let's kind of assuage that. So that's where we are right now.
All right, and then just to wrap everything up, when we made our initial proposal, we did ask Hofstra students in a survey how they felt about food waste on campus, and of the 67 responses that we received, 96% of the students said that they would be interested in seeing composting on campus. Even students that didn't exactly know what composting was or how to do it said that they would be interested in seeing it on campus in some capacity. And we believe that the best course of action for Hofstra to use in terms of mitigating food waste into the future is education and awareness. So teaching students how to compost and telling them not to buy, well, you know this, but maybe don't buy as much food if you feel like you've been throwing it away often. And then lastly, and this is the important point, is access. So if Hofstra is serious about having sustainable behaviors on campus, then we need to give students the tools that they need to actually reduce their own food waste. And so having composting bins, teaching students how to compost, and having a real plate first policy with reusable utensils and plates and cups so that you can reduce waste associated with food. And just to kind of wrap everything up, sustainability on campus is very exciting for people who work in the environmental field or are interested in it, yes, but it's also very important to all students because regardless of major or background, everyone wants to see Hofstra moving in the right direction and striving to be better in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. That was terrific. All right, our last presenters are Deb Tinarello and Mala Lal, who are going to talk about a very exciting idea, which is green roofs.
Hi, I'm Debbie Tinarello, and I'm just recently graduated from our sustainability program here at Hofstra, but I'm also a staffer at the National Center for Suburban Studies.
Hi everyone, I'm Mala. I am a current sustainability graduate student, and our proposed campus project, Our proposed campus project is incorporating green roofs here at Hofstra. So in short, green roofs are essentially a vegetative layer grown on the rooftop of a building. It's an innovative concept that touches on all three pillars of sustainability: the environment, economic, and social aspects. And if you really think about it, building materials and construction, the construction industry in general can be very wasteful. A lot of waste is generated when constructing and then maintaining a building over time. So installing green roofs is a really pleasing and positive way to promote sustainability in an area that is otherwise usually not that sustainable. And then there is some historical evidence of green roofs, but in terms of modern day technology, it really took off in the 60s, mostly in Germany and Switzerland. But green roofs are already being successfully implemented across college campuses here in the US. That photo is from Stony Brook University here on Long Island. There's some good examples at Williams College, the University of Michigan, Penn State, the list really goes on. And then installing green roofs does come with a lot of benefits. It reduces the impacts of the urban heat island effect. It reduces air pollution and better regulates the heat exchange within the building itself. So that in turn reduces the cost of heating the building in the winter and then cooling it in the summer, which then ultimately reduces emissions. And then it reduces the temperature of the roof surface itself and then the surrounding area, surrounding air. And then it helped manages storm runoff. And then aside from these economic and environmental benefits, there's a lot of social benefits that green roofs could potentially add, adding engagement to the Hofstra community, and then an opportunity, additional space to grow food. And then we just wanted to quickly touch on the fact that there is legislation out there requiring green roofs in certain cities, as well as non-legislative measures like tax incentives. Hofstra, of course, as far as we know, isn't obligated to do any of this, but it's a concept that's only growing and improving, so it'd be really great if we were at the forefront of it. And now Debbie will take us through the technical part of the different types of green roofs.
So the basics are pretty simple. You have a roof, some sort of insulation, drainage, filter, soil, and vegetation layer. So there's two major types of roofs. One is the extensive roof, and this is, as you can see in the picture, no one's walking on this roof. This is a roof that is mostly used for the environmental benefit. You can see that there's not a lot of structural reinforcement, which means there's not a lot of foot traffic necessary. But it's also cheaper to build and low maintenance, especially once the plants are established. And as Mala mentioned, and several people mentioned here, one of the benefits of this is stormwater runoff, which is particularly important here on Long Island, because we draw all of our drinking water from the ground. The other type of roof is intensive. This is sort of more what you see. It requires a lot more structural reinforcement because people are walking on it, foot traffic. The roofs can be used for entertainment and research. This is a higher maintenance choice and a more expensive choice, but it does allow for modular sections so things can be moved and changed, and that seems to help. I've also read multiple cases, but again, this is up for debate, that this extends a life up to 10 years of a roof, these types of plants. There's some that say 20, there's some that say less, so that's, the science is still out on that, but I do have a plan for how we can find out that information. There's also semi-intensive roofs, which is sort of a combination. Maybe a place like Giddleston could be a good place for like that, where there's already greenhouse, so there's already the ability for foot traffic, but maybe we could add some modular options. So very quickly, we just wanted to propose, in coordination with facilities, and I see that Joe Barkwell's here in operations, to evaluate the opportunities for intensive and extensive green roofs here on the campus, and then for the university to encourage interdisciplinary collaborations from faculty and students for potential new green roofs. And I just threw some examples here. Engineering can evaluate the structural integrity of the buildings for green roof proposals. Sustainability students can measure energy reduction, stormwater mitigation. Business students could project cost saving over the lifetime of the project. There's lots of opportunities for both research and for faculty and students to work together. Which is what I was just going to say. And one of the other things that may be really interesting, I see Dr. Hackett is here, and she introduced me to the idea of the urban heat index and how that is not just an issue for the environment, but also an issue of public health. And places like Penn State University teach classes on how to build and maintain green roofs, and that's both a sustainability and an engineering program. Intensive green roofs would allow for food production, and the point of this class was to find innovative ways where we could find food production on campus. So this would be a great way to do that and supplement the Pride Pantry or the farmers market that I know is happening on campus tomorrow. And also native pollinators are another choice. And this would be a great new social space on campus for students to interact. Research opportunities would be available for students and faculty. Being able to use what kind of soil is the best, what kind of plants are the best. There's so many opportunities, more than I can think of. And thank you.
Deb makes a really good point in the last slide here. Green roofs and in fact, everything that we've been talking about in this session provide ways that we can use the Hofstra campus as a laboratory into itself, where we can engage students and faculty in a wide variety of departments, studying and contributing to the development and the maintenance of all these different sustainability related projects. So with that, let's pull up the screen, and I can have everybody just come up to the podium around the stage here, and we'll take any questions that people have. We've got about 15 minutes left, so go ahead, guys, jump on up. And so if you have a question, we're going to need to get you the microphone. And the microphone is, so you're going to have to come up to the microphone. So line up at the microphone.
Hello, my name is Aliana. I'm an urban ecology student with a minors in sustainability studies. I'm also the president of our environmental club, so if you have questions about that, you can ask me about it. I just thought I should mention it. But my question is, I know some of you guys touched on this, but what partnerships do you think is important for the success of like the implementations of your initiative, also the continuation of those initiatives like on campus? It's like a general question.
I'd like to start that. So I helped work and coordinate the partnership with Roosevelt Community Garden. And I think it would be really great for us to really get more student involvement for that, especially with things like leaf. But I think trying to branch out of just the environmental sector and really getting into that interdisciplinary approach, maybe approaching things like the service fraternities on campus and other community service guided things, and commuter student organizations, stuff like that, where it's not just about the environment, because it's really about getting people outside of that, and that's where it really counts, because that's an audience that isn't already invested in these kinds of projects, I think.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that, is reaching the younger generation, whether it's college students or high school students. You know, we are focused on the environment and getting more people out to the land, but we need to find a way to reach more of you guys, to connect you with the land, because once you start connecting, then you can learn the benefits. Like, I've been with the Land Alliance for the past 17 years, and I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of the things I know now, I did not know before. And through my connection with the organization and just getting outdoors and coming to presentations like this, and you're learning about these butterfly, you learn so much. So it's through connection, you really get to learn a lot more things. So I think it's just reaching you guys and bringing you to the table is going to help make that happen.
I'll just jump in and say, just really think outside the box. I mean, just since I've been involved with this, so I just, I didn't know Professor Bennington before. I didn't know Mike Runkel before. We've had events, we've had people from the law school. We've had Pat Montagano from the rec center. We've had people from HR, on and on and on. We've actually had collaboration on 2 separate events from leaders from Shinnecock Nation out in Southampton. And talk about, environmental awareness. They were here before any of us, right? Native American populations out there. So there's incredible resources all around us, and I'd say just think outside the box and just start the conversations.
Thank you.
Another question?
Hi, my name is Mary, and I'm just curious. I see in the Student Center and every other bits and bytes and everything, we have trash bins, and it's like plastic and cans, and then it's waste. So I was curious if you know about, because it's obvious some people may forget and put it waste in the plastic. So do you have any data on what happens to that garbage? Does it go just to the waste, or does it go to recycling? Because not much of that was touched upon. Just curious.
We found that it was kind of difficult to find even just data on stuff that is apparently already being tracked, like the waste not system that Compass has, where that supposedly tracks how much food waste is being produced, what kind of food waste it is, whether it was avoidable or not, and then also where it goes. But that data isn't readily accessible to us. I don't think that the food, or not the food waste, but the recycling versus the actual trash is being monitored in any capacity necessarily. And for an answer to that, you'd probably have to talk to somebody who works in waste disposal.
And my follow-up question is, I know you mentioned having plates and reusable utensils. Do you think that that would be something that you're gonna do in the future, coming up soon? Because I noticed that with all the plastic utensils, and if they're not being recycled, it kind of seems like a lot of waste. Because I really like this presentation. It gave a lot of future sustainability when it comes to plants and everything, but I feel like the little things matter too when it comes to plastic utensils.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's the goal. I think Natalie was mentioning there's the direct food waste and then the associated food waste, and that would definitely be like associated food waste. And then like a plate first policy would be a great way to take a step towards addressing that.
Yeah, and to address your kind of timeline on that, when we emailed them, I believe they said that they're trying to bring that back. I think it was already a thing before the pandemic kind of hit. But there's places around campus where you can bring your things. I know Bits and Bites, if you go to the ramen station, I've done it before, you can bring your container back from that. But that's something that's not publicized. But then something like Starbucks, where they sell reusable containers where you can like get a drink in that, I've heard that some people have gone and they've not been able to get the drink and they've been told, yeah, just get the disposable cup and pour it in. So it's kind of give or take. We need some better access to know like what places can we do these things. Like at things like New Student Orientation, they give bottles to people. What if we gave people like a pack of like a fork, a spoon, maybe chopsticks too, because there's a few places on campus where chopsticks are a popular option, stuff like that, and then people just keep that on them. That's something I do, but the university providing that first, that's a really good thing that they could do. And they could brand it. That's always fun.
And to just wrap everything up from our end, our proposal is just that. It's a proposal. It started as a class project, and it's something that we would be interested in seeing implemented, but we do not have any actual plans as students to put this forward. It's something that we're just speaking out into the atmosphere and saying, hey, it'd be really cool as we as students saw this happen. But this isn't an actual project that is in the works in terms of the reusable food and the composting and that sort of thing.
This is where the student environmental group comes in. Mm-hmm. You need to develop a constituency and come up with a plan and get students behind it and lobby.
And I think they do have some work going on with Leaf, so if you're interested in that, I recommend going to Leaf tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Thank you.
I think Joe Barkwell has a comment to add.
Well, I was going to say, we
Gotta speak into the mic, Joe, sorry.
want to talk about the plate first policy. We did implement one, and COVID changed everything. We had to go with plastic. But I think the key to the good plate first policy is the educational piece. Mm-hmm. What you students were talking about, why we have this. You know, when I would talk to students, they would say, yeah, but I can get more in a takeout container, I could take it to my dorm room. But from the environmental education standpoint, why it's important for the plate first policy. We did implement it probably about 7 years because we had students just like you bring up the same issues. I think it's the educational piece that we also have to foster into the community.
That was the speaker this morning pointed out, talking about making major sustainability changes to the way things are done at Stanford University. There's the technology piece of it, but then the hard part is the behavioral piece. You have to get people to change their behaviors, and that's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. The same goes for the divided cans, not just here on Hofstra's campus, but anywhere that they are. Everybody's busy. They're in their zone of what they need to accomplish at that particular moment, and a trash can is a trash can, whether it's plastic, glass, cans, or refuse. It's going to go into the most convenient receptacle.
You have to make people conscious of their own activities. You have to really drive home the reason why this is important. And we can change people's behaviors. People wear seatbelts now. There's all kinds of behaviors which, we don't throw trash out our car windows anymore. People used to throw trash out their car windows all the time. And then there was this major public service advertising campaign in the 1970s that succeeded in changing the way Americans behave. So it can be done, but it takes effort.
Hi. So I know that there's sometimes a lot of red tape when it comes to implementing policies, university-wide. What are some things, I'm curious on literally all ends of the spectrum, what are some things that students ourselves can do on an individual level, sometimes in the absence of accessibility to compost receptacles, things like that? What are some things that we could possibly invest in ourselves, or, practices that we could start, practicing to reduce our own individual footprints?
could join Leaf. I will shout them out again because they are willing to help support any initiatives that you want to bring on campus. They are already in works with things around campus, around sustainability. And then stay in tune with like just service projects around campus. I know that there are some things associated with this event, like removal of some invasive plant species yesterday and hiking. And then we're gonna try to do some more stuff with Roosevelt Community Garden, doing stuff like that, trying to be involved in the community. That's always a great step, I think.
And if you want to reduce your personal carbon footprint, drive less, walk more, eat less meat, eat more vegetables. These are some of the most important things. Turn the lights off. All right, unplug things that are charging when they've fully charged. You know, reduce your energy use, reduce your fossil fuel use. Those are things we could all be doing.
And also on another end of things, it can be really hard as an individual to have a bunch of environmental guilt or stress like associated with climate change. So if you're doing these steps on an individual basis, doing as much as you can just take a deep breath and know that that's all you need to do, because it's a huge stressor. Literal like studies have been done on psychology. It does impact people just having that stress of thinking that they need to take the burden of the environment on themselves. And if you're doing these steps like joining clubs or even just what Dr. B was just saying, then you're already doing a lot. So
I rode my bicycle to campus today, 5 miles, in a shirt and tie.
Hello, my name is Jasmine, and I'm a journalism major and creative writing minor, and my question is for Miss Millwood. I think your efforts with the garden are really amazing, and I'm curious about knowing if you plan on incorporating sustainable ways of eating, traveling, artificial light and energy in your educational programs. Just basically teaching them about sustainability that happens off the garden. I know that you said you plan on bringing people from Hofstra to educate, you know, the people that you have there.
Sure. One of the things we did when we started the garden was because we don't have any light in the garden, so we added solar panels so we can have light instead of asking the county to give us electricity from, you know, the park that's next door. We added our own solar panels to our tool sheds so that we can have light throughout the fall season or in the evenings when the workers are in the garden working, or we've added solar lights throughout the garden to make things happen. One of the things we also do is talk about composting each year in the garden and how to make better use of some of the things that we're throwing out. Instead of throwing them in the garbage, we can compost them, but we kind of need to continue to educate folks as they're learning, doing the composting. We need to work on that a little bit better. Even with Cornell, they had to put aside their composting because the gardeners weren't doing a very good job at composting. In terms of other sustainability things, we're going to talk about food waste and how to preserve some of the foods. So in some seasons, we've had too many tomatoes, and so folks didn't know what to do with the tomatoes. So we encouraged them, hey, you can just wash them, throw them in a plastic bag, and put them in your freezer, and you can have them for a few months to use. So we do encourage those types of things. One of the things we also tried to do was get into the school system to teach some of the high school students and the parents on food waste and how they can preserve some of the foods that they get from the grocery store so they don't have food waste.
Thank you. I also have one more question for you, if you don't mind. I know that not many people major in natural resources and conservation programs in college as much as other programs. So if the North Shore Land Alliance were to gain funding, would you consider awarding grants or scholarships to students who plan on majoring in related fields?
We don't do scholarships, but we do have grantors that fund us or trustees that provide funding so we can hire interns for the summer. So that for the past 3 years, we've had three or four interns for the summer. It's paid. So we don't do it, but others have provided us the funding so we can make that possible. So it's something we're already doing. It's just that we don't give out the funding for it. Others give it to us. So
And the internship too.
Right, that's the college internship I'm referring to.
Oh.
Yes. And we're trying to explore, even high school students at the community garden so that we can pay them to work throughout the summer. So if there's funding, those opportunities are available.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I add one thing?
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
We have one more question.
Just real quickly, so just in addition, not to replace it all, but in addition to the community gardens, which are incredible, we're actually been exploring and made some progress on introducing indoor vertical farming, so aeroponics and hydroponics, which is not season dependent. We've actually had conversations with freight farms and aero farms. If you go to Whole Foods, any of you shop at Whole Foods, you'll see aero farms. It's a big commercial operation. A lot of the green leafy stuff is from them. And so, again, to supplement regular community gardens, soil farming outdoors, we're working on that as well.
Okay, one last question. Yay.
All right. Hi. Sorry, I'll try to keep this quick. My name is Caitlin. I'm a senior music performance major. And as a senior, I remember back in my freshman year when we tried to do a lot of these sustainability things, when the plates were an option, where our freshman gift was reusable straws and a water bottle. I still have them, I still use them. But one of the things that changed with COVID was the change from pressed paper containers for like takeaway to plastic. And while we're working on getting the plates back, I was wondering if there's gonna be any attempts to try and bring the pressed paper back, because those will biodegrade, but the plastic, while it's recyclable, there's not too much that can happen with it as compared to the paper.
Would you like to take this one?
Thank you. Yeah, I noticed when that happened. Yeah. Yeah.
There were a lot of things that COVID put a stop to.
Yeah.
I think we have to revisit it.
All right.
All right, let's give our panel final hand. Thank you all for coming. And this concludes the session.
Okay, guys.